Esperanza Rising, pages 167 through 172. On page 167, I am beginning beneath the squiggle. Esperanza huddled with Josefina, Hortensia, and a small group of women, waiting for the morning truck to take them to the sheds. A thick tulle ground fog that hugged the earth settled in the valley surrounding them, as if they stood within a deep gray cloud. There was no wind, only silence and penetrating cold. Esperanza bundled in all the clothing that she could put on: old wool pants, a sweater, a ragged jacket, a wool cap, and thick gloves over thin gloves, all borrowed from friends in the camp. Hortensia had showed her how to heat a brick in the oven and bundle it in newspaper, and she hugged it to her body to keep warm as they rode on the truck. Since the driver could only see a few yards ahead, the truck rumbled slowly over the dirt roads. They passed miles of naked grapevines, stripped of their harvest and bereft of their leaves. Fading into the mist, the brown and twisted trunks looked frigid and lonely. The truck stopped at the big packing shed. It was really one long building with different open-air sections, as long as 6 train cars. The railroad tracks ran along one side, and docks for trucks ran along the other. Esperanza had heard Mama and the others talk about the sheds, how they were busy with people, women standing at long tables packing the fruit, trucks coming and going with their loads fresh from the fields, and workers stocking the train cars that would later be hooked to a locomotive to take the fruit all over the United States. But cutting potato eyes was different. Since nothing was being packed, there wasn't the usual activity. Only 20 or so women gathered in the cavernous shed, sitting in a circle on upturned crates, protected from the wind by only a few stacks of empty boxes. The Mexican supervisor took their names. With all the clothing they were wearing, he barely looked at their faces. Josefina had told Esperanza that if she was a good worker, the bosses would not concern themselves with her age, so she knew she would have to work hard. Esperanza copied everything that Hortensia and Josefina did. When the women put the hot bricks between their feet to keep them warm while they worked, so did she. When they took off their outer gloves to work in thin cotton ones, she did the same. Everyone had a metal bin sitting behind them. The field workers brought cold potatoes and filled up their bins. Hortensia took a potato, and then with a sharp knife, she cut it into chunks around the dimples. She tapped her knife on one of the dimples. "That is an eye," she whispered to Esperanza. "Leave 2 eyes in every piece, so there will be 2 chances for it to take root." Then she dropped the chunks into a burlap sack. When the sack was full, the field workers took it away. "Where did they take them?" she asked Hortensia. "To the fields. They plant the eye pieces, and then the potatoes grow." Esperanza picked up a knife. Now she knew where potatoes came from. The women began chatting. Some knew each other from camp, and one of them was Marta's aunt. "Is there any more talk of striking?" asked Josefina. "Things are quiet now, but they are still organizing," said Marta's aunt. "There is talk of striking in the spring when it is time to pick. We are afraid there will be problems. If they refuse to work, they will lose their cabins in the migrant camps. And then where will they live? Or worse, they will all be sent back to Mexico." "How can they send all of them back?" asked Hortensia. "Reparation," said Marta's aunt. "La migra. The immigration authorities. Round up people who cause problems and check their papers. If they are not in order or they do not happen to have their papers with them, the immigration officials send them back to Mexico. We have heard that they have sent people whose families have lived here for generations, those who are citizens and have never been to Mexico." Esperanza remembered the train at the border and the people being herded onto it. She had been thankful for the papers that Abuelita's sisters had arranged. Marta's aunt said, "There is also some talk about harming Mexicans who continue to work." The other women sitting around the circle pretended to concentrate on their potatoes, but Esperanza noticed worried glances and raised eyebrows. Then Hortensia cleared her throat and said, "Are you saying that if we continue to work during the spring, your niece and her friends might harm us?" "We are praying that does not happen. My husband says we will not join them. We have too many mouths to feed. And he has told Marta she cannot stay with us. We can't risk being asked to leave the camp or losing our jobs because of our niece. Heads nodded in sympathy, and the circle was silent, except for the sounds of the knives cutting the crisp potatoes. Is anyone going to Mexico for La Navidad? Asked another woman, wisely changing the subject. Esperanza kept cutting the potato eyes, but listened carefully, hoping someone would be going to Aguas Calientes for Christmas. But no one seemed to be traveling anywhere near there. A worker refilled Esperanza's metal bin with another load of cold potatoes. The rumbling noise brought her thoughts back to what Marta's aunt had said. If it was true that the strikers would threaten people who kept working, they might try to stop her too. Esperanza thought of Mama in the hospital and Abuelita in Mexico and how much depended on her being able to work. She was lucky enough to have a job in the spring. No one was going to get in her way.